Bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio. For the masses. How you doing? Today's Wednesday, January 8th, 2020. 8 days into the new year, only 358 days left. What's cracking? We are live somewhere from a bunker in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black. For KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planets. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? It's Wednesday night. Tonight, very special guest, William Henry joins us. Oh, man, we've got a good conversation about to happen tonight on the show. Tomorrow night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. All right, you can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. The Sandbox on Twitter is hashtag F2B. That's F, the number 2, and B. We don't bite. Come and hang out with us. Any questions or comments during the show? For myself or William, use hashtag F2BQ. That's Fade to Black Questions. You can also email throughout the show, Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Really excited about this. William Henry. Nashville-based author, investigative mythologist, art historian, and TV presenter. He's an internationally recognized authority on human spiritual potential, transformation, and ascension. The spiritual voice and consulting producer of History Channel's Ancient Aliens and the host of Gaia TV series The Awakened Soul, The Lost Signs of Ascension, and Arcanum. William has over 30 years of research distilled into 18 books and numerous video presentations. Along with his wife, Claire, they lead luxury ascension-themed tours to sacred sites, including Egypt, France, Italy, and England. His website, of course, is williamhenry.net. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, William Henry. William, good evening.
Good evening, Jimmy. Thanks for having me back.
Man, it's so good to hear your voice. How have you been? It's been too long.
Oh, wonderful.
See, this is the thing. I know that you probably just got back from France. You just got back from Egypt. You just taped some new stuff from Ancient Aliens. Things are always going on. What's new?
Yeah, you just nailed it. I just flew in from L.A. today. We did some new episodes for Ancient Aliens, and I'm on my way to Egypt next month.
That's what I'm talking about. You going with Claire?
Pardon me?
I said you're going with Claire.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
And Egypt is always in the news, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. There's a weird connection with everything that you do, and you and I were talking about this earlier tonight. And I actually want to jump straight into this because I think it's very important, and that is this new TV series, Messiah. Mm-hmm. And Rita and I, we got... the night that it was released, we got about 10 minutes into the first episode and went, okay, something's going on here. Yeah. And the production value was there. The cinematography, the writing was on point. The acting was, and I thought, okay, we're in for a ride. We ended up watching everything in 2 runs, 2 days, but we binged the entire series from beginning to end. And I immediately posted, William, onto social media for everybody to go and check it out. That's it. Whatever you want to pull from it, but it's pretty cool. Just go and watch it, and we'll talk about it later kind of thing. But it hit me like that. There was so much going on. What's your overall take before we dive a little deeper?
Well, I like you. I mean, there's something about the concept of the second coming of a Messiah. How would people react if a convincing prophet suddenly appeared, maybe performing miracles, gathering huge followings as the character did in the Netflix Messiah series? It is a really compelling question, especially in these times. People have a sense that there's something going on in our world, and we all have this sense of anticipation that we're heading towards a very profound moment. And I think that's what the Messiah series was tapping, was this zeitgeist of, okay, let's have a trial run here. Let's see how people might react if the real deal was actually to happen.
And you can't help but think, what if? Right? I mean, what if this actually happened? So many, I mean, as they have it play out in the series, so many personalities have surfaced over the years claiming to be the Messiah. Got a small following going or whatever. But today, if it happened with like it plays out here with social media and everything else that we have today with technology, it could almost play out the way that they've done it here. I think it was really well written.
Oh, extremely well written, very well produced. Roma Downey and Mark Burnett, who did the series The Holy Bible. She, of course, did Touched by an Angel, were our producers of the program. The writing is excellent. The storyline just absolutely fascinating. It carries you from one episode to another, and you can't wait to see what's going to happen here. And they very cleverly leave it up to the audience to kind of look in the mirror as they're watching the series, because you're never quite sure, is this guy for real? Is he a false prophet? Is he a Christ figure? Is he an antichrist figure? And they kind of leave you to sort that out yourself.
And one of the things that it caused with Rita and I, we were constantly pausing and talking and asking questions. And I think that will also provoke the same atmosphere in homes around the world where these conversations are going to result from watching this. Not only the what if part, but the religious side of it, the technical side of it, the pop culture side of it, how governments are going to deal with this, religious institutions and how they would deal with something like this. And it provokes that kind of thought, doesn't it?
It does. And as I was watching it, watched a bit of it with Claire, and her son happened to be visiting, so we watched it together. And I'm not being critical of the series because, again, it's a piece of entertainment. It's not meant to be a documentary or a lecture by any means. But I kept waiting for the Messiah to fulfill the requirements of the Messiah, which he doesn't in the series. He does many other things, and perhaps in season 2, which Netflix hasn't officially announced a season 2 yet, but I can't imagine they won't do a season 2. They've got everything so beautifully set up.
Right.
There are very specific things that the Messiah is to do. He does none of them in the series, and that's not to take a shot at the series, but it's to say that most people are, okay, there's going to be a second coming, but they don't really have a sense of how will they know? How will you have an ability to judge, if that's a correct term, or to make a correct assessment if a person is a Christ figure or an anti-Christ type figure. And this is what the series addresses. It leaves you kind of guessing, and then hopefully the conversations like you and Rita had and others are having as they're watching the program will cause them to go down the rabbit hole and say, well, how could this manifest, and what would be the role of this figure? How would I respond if it were actually occurring?
Now, one of the other things that I want to stay focused on the series, but we can't deny the elephant in the room here. Hot on the heels of the series, in a very provocative way, is dealing with governments and world events in not only the Middle East but the climate here in the United States, and it seems almost prophetic in nature, even though it's a television series. And you go and you finish it, and then a week later, we've got what just went down in the Middle East and is continuing to go down in the Middle East with Iran and the United States and the hotbed of activity over there. And it seems like the concerns that we had and the questions that were raised during the series were now forcing the issue in real life, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so strange how life imitates art, or the other way around. It's very synchronistic. Everything that's happening in the Middle East right now, especially in Iran, is driven by the belief, and especially among the Islamic people, that a Messiah is imminently going to appear. They call him the Mahdi, of course, the 12th Imam. He's thought to be a descendant of Muhammad, who will ultimately eliminate Christianity and install Islam as the sole world religion. This is the goal of Iran. And it is tremendously coincidental that at the same time as you have millions of people around the world tuned into this idea of a Messiah appearing, that we get the real life story playing out right before our eyes. It's actually kind of, the synchronicity goes fairly deep, actually, Jimmy, because the name of the actor who was playing the Messiah in the Netflix film, his name is Mahdi.
It tripped me out.
He's a Belgian actor,
Yes.
And he went through all kinds of spiritual training and preparation for doing the role. Really took it seriously. Took on the mantle, if you will, of the Messiah. And it's just like, oh my gosh, how does it work when an actor named Mahdi plays a Messiah, a figure that in the Islamic world would be called the Mahdi?
And this is for you. For you personally, with not only your books and your lectures, but your research has been laser focused on this very subject, right? And I can't think of anybody better to talk with about this than you. And does it make you comfortable? Are you able to step back and go, see, I wrote a book about this in 2012, right?
I did. Yeah. I did. I wrote a book called The Judgment Day Device, which is about the Jewish, Christian, and Islamic prophecies of the arrival of the Messiah and what this figure is to do. There's literally a to-do list and ways that everyone will be able to identify this Messiah when it appears. So I was tremendously interested to see how Netflix would handle this subject. And here it is. They've gathered the world together. They've got everybody's attention. It's almost as if people are ready now to take the next step and say, okay, let's bring the real thing in.
Now, there is the other aspect. We have the Messiah side of it, but then we also have the false prophet side of it. And we don't know in this series, and I'm not going to, how do I want to say this? I'm not going to give anything away. That's not going to happen tonight. But they very cleverly did this throughout this season of 10 episodes of you don't know, right? Yep. You don't know. And wouldn't that be the case if it actually played out? You wouldn't know if the Messiah was a false prophet or not. And that would be the role of a false prophet, right?
Well, yeah, and this is why it's it's so confusing. It's one of the it's like the Gordian knot in the Messianic prophecies. The more you pull on the knot, or the more you try to undo it, the tighter the knot becomes. Like, for example, in the Islamic tradition, the Mahdi is called the Mahdi because his name means the guided one, because he will be guided by Allah to recover the Ark of the Covenant, which is his mark of distinction. And in fact, that is the icon or the relic of all of the messiahs from the Jewish, Christian, and Islamic perspective. But in Islam, the Mahdi is considered to be a messiah or a prophet, but to Christians, he would be a false prophet. But the thing is that in Islam, the Mahdi has an assistant who actually recovers the Ark of the Covenant for him, and his name is Jesus Christ. So how are Christians going to be confronted, or how will they react when confronted with a potential appearance of the Mahdi and his partner, his prophet, Jesus?
Were you looking for signals? And I felt, again, no spoilers here, but were you looking for the trickster element? Right, that side of it where you could sit back as William Henry and go, aha, right? Were you looking for that?
Well, I was, because in some of the pre-press for the series, Netflix had been a little bit touchy about the name of the character, Al-Misa, which means the Messiah, or that's what they call him, Al-Misa in the series.
Right.
And Al-Misa Ad-Dajjal is the Arabic name given to the false messiah, the liar, the deceiver, an evil presence. And so Netflix did everything they could to try to scrub that fact clean from some of the early takes about the series. And so I was kind of with that thinking, well, okay, let's see what other signals are coming through in the series, because they're definitely aware of the sensitivity of the subject matter with which they're dealing. In calling him Al-Misa Ad-Dajjal, that Arabic name, that's kind of like calling a character John Antichrist and then asking the viewers to guess this figure's true intentions.
Right.
So right off the bat, they were signaling that, okay, there's going to be a little bit of duplicity here. We're going to maybe trick you a little bit, or we're going to present this Messiah as a trickster figure who you will ultimately not be able to determine in season one if he is a false prophet or if he is in fact a Christ-like being.
And the other interesting part about this, which I don't think any of us can deny, certainly here in the United States, I can't speak for others, but here in the United States, I grew up like everybody else with the urban legend, myth, and biblical references throughout family life and school about World War III, Armageddon happening in the Middle East. There's going to be this false prophet. It's all going to kick off, and we've all grown up with one eye here in the States and the other one looking at the Middle East going, okay, is this the year? Now we're in, the year 2000, or we're in 2020, but we're in these biblical times that we have been told about growing up. Now the Middle East is kicking off. We've got this TV series on TV, and now we're all forced to go back and remember everything that we've been told. Are we at the end of times? Is this actually playing out in front of us, or is it just all a strange coincidence?
Well, I mean, and that was one of the primary messages of the series, is that history has ended. And in reality, Jimmy, history has ended. We are not living in the same world today that existed 20 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago. That world is over. We are now fully enmeshed, integrated with artificial intelligence, with technology beyond the comprehension of the average individual, with potentials for migrating into space that nobody could conceive of, at least until the recent decade. And so everything that's happened in human history up to this point is almost irrelevant. We are living in such a different world now. And so maybe what we do need is this final conflict, if you will, this Armageddon, to fully bring everybody into awareness that old world is gone. Homo sapien is finished. There will be no humans. If Google and Apple, Samsung, Sony, and these other companies have their way, we will be transhumans within 15 years, which means this is a whole new chapter in history. that we are entering into. So this message that comes through in the Messiah series that history is ended is very accurate, as a matter of fact.
And using technology for this message, we're not talking about printing presses here, right?
No.
We're talking about satellites and streaming and network services and technology to do exactly what you're referencing. And again, very strange.
Very strange. And the other story that I'm following, kind of also has sort of come out of left field for me, is Kanye West and his belief that he's the Messiah.
What do we, okay. If there is
this
somebody
is a real life Messiah.
Yes. And the thing that freaked me out, that may be a little bit too juvenile of a word to use, but what really freaked me out about that was if you have an individual with facial recognition like Kanye West, right, with the power, with the followers, and then wants to turn around and start suggesting these things and going on, what did he go on, Joel Osteen?
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to do a tour next year.
Right. If somebody out there was to have that kind of a notoriety and that kind of influence and power, it would be Kanye.
Yeah, it's astounding. I mean, I have just a weird story around this. If you don't mind, I'll just take a minute and tell it.
Sure.
It starts 1989. Ted Turner said science and technology can't solve the world's problems. He offered $500,000 for the best piece of fiction dealing with themes ensuring the survival and prosperity of all life on the planet. So I write a book called Turtle Island. I had learned about an artist named James Turrell. He's literally the Leonardo da Vinci of our time. And he bought Roden Crater, an extinct volcano near Flagstaff, Arizona. And in this National Geographic article that I read in 89 or 90, he said, I'm going to turn this volcano into a portal. And I'm like, wow, because this guy works with light with a capital L. He is an absolute genius. Every major museum on the planet has a Turrell exhibition. He is by far the most distinguished and most cosmic artist of our time. And so I centered my book on Roden Crater, and the story was about a Messiah who emerges from Roden Crater. And that's in 1989. I don't win the Turner Tomorrow Award. I happened through the years to have met Turrell when he came to Nashville in 1999. And then I met him again just a couple of years ago in my friend's, a very good friend of mine's home in Phoenix, and got to spend a few hours with him talking about all our favorite subjects. And then just a few months ago, I learned that Kanye West has donated $10 million to James Turrell so that he can complete the Roden Crater project. And he films his new video, his new IMAX video, Jesus the King at Roden Crater. And he is the Messiah coming out of Roden Crater. And it's like, how could this possibly be? How could Kanye West possibly be the Messiah? Or is he the Messiah? He certainly believes that he is. And is he, in fact, fulfilling what the Messiah is supposed to do? One of the things that the Messiah has on the to-do list is that he teaches the 144,000 believers a secret song, a new song. He leads a choir in singing a new song. What is Kanye's video about? Singing a new song to the Lord with a choir. And what is Kanye West most noted for? The way he has used sound tools and auto-tune to change the human voice. Like it's becoming more than human. You can't make this stuff up, Jimmy. It is so weird what's going on. And it just falls into, again, to this zeitgeist where people are anticipating something is up, and they're willing to accept a TV Messiah, a Netflix Messiah, just as easily as some are going to accept that Kanye West is the Messiah.
Do you think that in the privacy of his own home, right, Kanye's at home, does he believe that he is the Messiah, or that this is part of an empire-building money grab for Kanye? Or does he actually believe, look in the mirror, and believe that he communicates with God and that he's the Messiah and that's his job here on earth.
Well, I mean, he has a long-standing, well-known Messiah complex. His Messiah complex is as big and perhaps even worse than Bono's. But, I mean, seriously, Bono is very open about his Messiah complex. And so is Kanye West. And going back to 2004, he won a Grammy for Jesus Walks, and he shows up on Rolling Stone magazine wearing a crown of thorns.
That's right.
With the headline, The Passion of Kanye West. In 2013, he starts calling himself Yeezus, which is said to be like a portmanteau of Yeezy, the rapper's nickname, and Jesus. And so you have to wonder, is this just an act, a polarizing way for Kanye to go out and get attention? Lots of it. He certainly got it from that. Or is Kanye West the Messiah? I mean, it's absolutely bizarre. So I've followed this because I have just an interest in this subject and have had for such a long time. And I enjoy watching these guys come dance on the world stage. But they never do the things that they're supposed to do. There is a to-do list, at least according to Jewish legend. When the Messiah appears, the first thing he's got to do for everybody to identify this figure as the actual Messiah is Kanye, Bono, whoever, the Netflix Messiah, has got to get the Ark of the Covenant and has got to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem and take the Ark of the Covenant to that temple. Nothing else, anything short of that, you're a false prophet.
Well,
that is the litmus test.
I do have some of Kanye's Yeezy shoes, and they look like they would float. I might be able to walk on water. I didn't even think about that. What about? Oh, somebody help me! Actually, I do have those shoes.
Offer this caveat, Jimmy. I mean, I offer my humblest respect to all of these people. Be it Kanye, Bono, their artistic creativity, their accomplishments, just astounding. I believe they're coming from the right place. They do want to take our world to a new and better level. And so I'm not sitting here as some, kind of brat sitting here in Nashville saying, Kanye thinks he's a Messiah, Bono thinks he's a Messiah. It's nothing like that. Mm-hmm. It's just to say, okay, if you are the guy, then you need to take it to the next level, but you got to educate yourself on how the Jewish authorities, the Islamic authorities, the Christian authorities will know who you actually are.
There was talking about real life playing itself out here through TV is the evangelist part that was played by Beau Bridges in The Messiah, where he's going to bring the Messiah out on stage, right, and make the announcement. And that is going on with Joel Osteen right now and Kanye. And I just stepped back and I thought, this is like I'm in deja vu land, right? Do you think that Kanye and Joel have had this Messiah conversation?
You would have to think so. I mean, Joel Osteen does not need Kanye West in his life. Right. I mean, Joel Osteen's doing just fine on his own.
Right.
He's got this massive church in Houston, Texas, massive following, makes hundreds of millions of dollars, which is what it seems to be about for a lot of these guys. So he doesn't need the grief of hooking up with Kanye West, but yet that's what they're said to be doing. In next May, they're going to have a major event at Yankee Stadium, and who knows, they might take it other places from there. But the key thing is that they're, again, acting out this drama, and people are responding to it in a major way. And so now that the thing is to say, well, where are you going to take this from here? Is this a descent into madness, or is this actually a journey into the light?
It's very scary in a weird way. It's entertaining too. It's pretty fun to watch.
It's a great conversation starter.
Yes,
that's for sure, no doubt about it, because it definitely causes you to have a gut check, makes you wonder where am I coming from? In the Messiah series on Netflix, the El Misa, Mehdi, the actor, had the ability to literally cross over the glass, and that is something that's really profound. When that happens, you're really speaking to the hearts of the viewer. And this is, I know, what happened to millions of people who are watching this program. Is they are literally, some people I know were commenting, they're taking notes, and they're going to go back and answer personally the questions that El Missa asked the various characters throughout the series.
Rita and I were doing that. We were doing just that, William. We were going, okay, well, he said this, let's go this, and we had like 10 points. We were going over and over again what he had said and confronted and presented to these different characters and how it affected them personally. But you know what? I've got to take a break here, but I did find one thing very interesting with all of that. Nobody told anybody else about their personal interactions with him, right? They kept it to themselves.
Right.
They all were going through this personal drama. They knew something special had happened that they couldn't explain, but they didn't share it with anybody. They kept it internal. And I found that very creative writing. Very well done. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, William Henry. We've got a lot to discuss, and we're going to go through all of it. It's going to be a great conversation. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. William's website, simple, williamhenry.net. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, William Henry. I want to remind everybody, June 26th and the 27th of 2020, Rita and I will be at the Awakening Conference in Manchester, United Kingdom, with Eric Von Daniken and Richard Dolan, Nick Pope, Grant Cameron, 12 other speakers and special guests. Tickets and info are over at awakeningufo.com. And William, keeping the conversation exactly on point, not only about the Middle East and the possible end of times or the start of a new time and the Messiah, is technology, which is something else that you write about. And the end of times may not come from, nuclear bombs or World War III out of the Middle East. It could come from entropy and the unraveling of technology where we have just taken it maybe too far. Is that possible? Could that be the end of everything?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, you would find good company in that assertion from James Lovelock. He is the guy that came up with the Gaia hypothesis. He worked for NASA back in the 70s looking for life on Mars and wondered what is it that makes the Earth so different as a living planet as compared to a dead planet like Mars. And he came up with the Gaia hypothesis that the Earth has a spirit. The Earth has an intelligence, a collective intelligence of all the beings on the planet come together and they form what is called Gaia. And Lovelock has gone on record and has been talking about this for over a decade that Gaia is not happy with what humanity has done to the planet, and Gaia has a solution, a final solution for humanity. And he believes that AI was sent by Gaia to eliminate humans from the planet.
Is something like this possible? And what I mean, I'm talking about AI. Is it possible in our lifetime, or is this something that is still generations out in front of us? Is this a today reality, or is this something that our grandchildren need to deal with?
No, I think we are the ones that are deciding what our grandchildren will deal with. We are the ones who are going to make the decision to allow Silicon Valley, the Digerati, to implement their ultimate solutions for humanity to augment us with their technology, to change so that we can live in this new messed up environment that we've created for ourselves. I mean, we're living now in an electromagnetic smog, and now we're introducing 5G, which some people believe scientists believe is lethal to all organic life on Earth. And the point I keep trying to remind them of is that, hey, the plan from Silicon Valley's point of view is that flesh and blood humans won't be living on the Earth. It'll be transhumans. It'll be humans meshed with machines that will be living in this new environment, and they could care less if the ocean is clean or if the air is clean, because they'll have technological apps or solutions that will be able to enable them to live in this environment.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and that's the scary part about this, and this is what also plays into the end time prophecy. I mentioned the 144,000 that will sing a new song.
Right.
That will be led by the Messiah. Well, these same 144,000, they'll be on earth at the same time that Jesus returns, and they'll be the ones who will be confronting the beast, as in the mark of the beast prophecy from the book of Revelation, where people will not be able to buy, sell, or trade unless they have this mark in their forehead or in their hand. And there are way too many pundits out there now that are making the correct observation that the beast is absolutely AI and quantum computers. And we are this close right now to people having to taking the mark of the beast in the social credit system that will enable them to participate in the world economy.
Why did we jump so quickly? Why did we embrace technology so quick? 1995, if you look back, right, 25 short years ago, William, which to me 1995 seems like yesterday, but 1995, it was a different world. It was a different world, and we went off to the races without any consideration of social impact, environmental impact, the economy, brick and mortar stores. We didn't consider anything. We just went for it, didn't we?
We did, and this is part of the acceleration that the technotypes refer to as the singularity. This moment that we're rushing to right now, where the machines that we're building become more intelligent than we are, maybe by a little, maybe by a lot. I mean, we're talking, Elon Musk is always talking about AI computers that have more intelligence on their own than the entire collective humanity all put together. And that as we approach the singularity, we're going to enter into this event horizon where everything is going to change. And by the nature of the singularity, nobody knows what's on the other side of that, but they believe that that's some between now and maybe 2030, 2035 at the latest. So we're talking 15 years. It is this dramatic change that is beyond the comprehension of everybody. Nobody knows what's going to happen after 2035 when the singularity takes place.
And what scares me today, I mean, like right now, as you and I are speaking, is that most don't understand and don't care how technology is absolutely involved in every aspect of your life. All of it. All of it. Your food, your water, your electricity, your job, your money, your kids, education, your car, your house, your home. Every aspect of your life is now completely 100% dependent on technology. And it wasn't that way in 1995. The internet did not deal with the logistics of food distribution or electricity or communications and cell phones, and everything that we have today is now completely tied and dependent on the internet. Most people don't understand that, nor do they care. That's what scares me.
It should, because and I've written an article about this called Lucifer's Rebellion, because this is the beast technology that we're talking about with the book of Revelation. We're talking about a total dictatorship, a technological dictatorship led by these corporations that are more powerful than most governments. And it is not just a technological issue, it's a spiritual issue, because with this technology comes a complete loss of self-identity, privacy, let me just mention this, too. This is kind of a very important aspect of this that a lot of people, I think, don't fully appreciate, and that is that a lot of your digerati types, your technological types, they subscribe to the philosophies of people like Richard Dawkins, the author of The Selfish Gene and other books. And the core idea of this, it's a materialist philosophy, as it's called, and the idea is that our genes are information, and it's our genes that are important, not our bodies. It's our genes that will survive beyond us, not our temporary, ephemeral bodies. So technically speaking to them, or philosophically speaking, we are information that can be cut, copied, pasted, augmented, put into other realities, because all you are, Jimmy, speaking to you directly, is information. You are data. You are data that can be bought, sold, transmitted, we can manipulate it in any way that they see fit. What this means is you don't have a soul. You are unimportant in this scenario. You are just simply another bit of data in this vast computer we now call humanity. And that's how these people think. This is the guiding philosophy of every major corporation involved in technology development. Every major scientist thinks this. It's totally atheistic. It's anti-spiritual. It's demonic in some people's viewpoint. And I'm not one that goes that far with it, but this is the point I'm trying to stress, is that this, in fact, is a spiritual dilemma that we are in now. We have been taken over by an artificial intelligence that may, in fact, be an alien intelligence, and probably is. It's certainly not human.
Yeah, I had read a book in 1985 that addressed everything that we are talking about right now, obviously before the internet, before personal computers. I think the most technically advanced thing we had back then was like a beeper, right? And videotape, right? It was a different world. But it addressed a cashless society, banking done through cards, chips in the hand, the mark of the beast. It addressed a technical future that was going to eliminate all of this. And I thought to myself, this is science fiction. Now, the book was fiction. I mean, it was nonfiction. The book was nonfiction and was very direct, and it pointed out things with the Catholic Church and Christianity and inconsistencies and all of this. But today, we are living everything that book pointed out to me back then, which I thought was fantasy. And it starts to make me a little bit nervous. And it also tells me this: the most spiritual person on this planet, when a plane is crashing, is Richard Dawkins. I guarantee it. And I think you're understanding what I'm trying to reference here. And that's I think that's where we are today. I really do. Yeah, and I don't think it's past the time that we can wake up and do something about it. The only solution really is to unplug from it. It's so insidious. And again, I in my presentations about this, I try not to come off as too fear-based. I'm not trying to drive people into despair. But the fact of the matter is that this is an anti-human, and it is certainly an anti-Christ as well, philosophy. It just basically says you do not matter. You are nothing but information. This archaic superstition that there's some kind of creator being that loves you is pathetic from their point of view. And that simply you've got to wake up and realize that God is a programmer, and you live in a simulated reality that is created by this programmer. You have no existence beyond this realm that you presently inhabit. There is no base reality beyond this. And when you listen to these people, you're thinking, what planet did you come from? Or what master do you actually serve? Because it is certainly not a being of light and love. And this is what we're confronted with. This is, again, the driving philosophy. When people like Elon Musk speak of their love of simulation theory and how much they talk about it, this is the conversation.
This is the heart of it, and this is why I say that this is the philosophy that is driving the digerati. They think it's okay for humans just to treat one another as bits of data and bits of information. You have no privacy, you have no individuality, you are nothing except what they can extract from you in terms of data. That is the only thing that matters to these people. If you ask people at Facebook about the definition of a soul, the soul to them is that's all your keystrokes you put up on Facebook, all those photos you put up on Facebook and Instagram and elsewhere. That information equals your soul. You have no continuing existence beyond this realm. That is a horrible, horrible philosophy in my view, and this is what people have to wake up to. And we spiritual types have to have a ready and very good answer for these people to prove that, in fact, there is a base reality beyond this one, that after we die, we probably reincarnate, we do ascend and dwell in other realms where there are other beings that are, many of them, more advanced than humanity, and we have to be able to prove the existence of those other realities. That is our primary challenge right now, and I say that because these simulation theorists are out launching satellites to prove mathematically that we live in a video game. And once they prove that, it literally is game over for humanity, in my view.
Do you remember in the last episode of The Messiah, and the plane is crashing, right? And Avi turns to the Messiah. He starts crying. I'm sorry, right?
Right.
That's Richard Dawkins. That's Richard Dawkins. Tell God I'm sorry. Oh,
right,
man.
Tell God I'm sorry.
Yeah. He's going to whip a cross out that he's carrying around in his pocket. But I truly believe that, and I'm stating this as my true belief, that science and physics right now, theoretical, cosmology, astronomy, and the hardcore science, the more that they find out, they are realizing that this wasn't by chance. This wasn't some mathematical wizardry that happened and we became ourselves and consciousness. It just appeared. They're starting to find out that there is something else going on. And that's the part where Dawkins and others like him and Lawrence Krauss, they're going to have to deal with that when physics starts to unravel what consciousness is and how we make this transition from atoms without consciousness, right, and a soul to you and I talking right now and having a conversation and thinking and contemplating. Where does that transition happen? That's the part that Krauss and Dawkins and others like them, they're going to have to deal with this once these, dominoes and these chips start to fall.
Yeah, I agree, and that is the hope that really ultimately drives me at this time, is to help to find those answers, that light is there. And I just personally have this deep soul sense that we are on the precipice of something truly magnificent and beyond our comprehension. On the positive side, call it the new golden age, call it the age of Aquarius. We are at that moment where we're going to be turning the page right now. And at the moment, we do have the materialists, the technologists that seem to be the ones that have their hand on that page more firmly than the spiritual types. And that is our challenge right now, is to say, well, wait a minute, we're going to turn that page with you. We're not going to allow you to direct human civilization, turn us into machines, and turn our planet into some kind of like Borg cube or something.
Somebody just tweeted out that guy's going to have the most boring life review talking about Richard Dawkins. That's actually pretty funny. And there's another aspect of this, though, with Silicon Valley, and that is quantum computing. And the reason why, all of this simulation talk, which is all of it is a serious possibility, but the way that quantum computing is possible is that we are dealing with parallel worlds. We're dealing with some kind of alternative. Yeah, that's how qubits work. That's entanglement, and they understand this. they didn't have a firm grip on this 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, but today quantum computers work. And they understand that the only way that this happens is if there are multiple parallel dimensions out there. And that's it. And maybe they are going to face the same things that Dawkins and others, in that if another reality is real, another parallel world is real, then everything else must be too. Do you think that they are going to cross that line?
Well, I think that they're going to be confronted with it pretty hot and heavy. There's no doubt about that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about Geordie Rose of D-Wave System, who builds those quantum computers, and said that he calls this an altar to an alien god, his quantum computer. And these are just some of the comments that you get from the digerati, the Silicon Valley types. Even Elon Musk has famously said that this technology is demonic. So it does make you wonder if it has come from some maybe even ancient source. I mean, Geordie Rose likened the demons that have created quantum computers to the Nephilim and the Anunnaki.
That 10 minutes or that 15-minute presentation that Geordie did,
yeah,
I remember the first time that I saw it, I said to myself, the entire world needs to listen to these words. Absolutely. Everybody needs, and what I thought was most astounding about that presentation was the people that he was speaking to, because the camera would pan out to the audience and jaws were on the floor. Because they understood who Geordie was, and he is saying the most crazy things right now, but he's basing it on technology and his reality, right?
His personal experience.
That's right. I thought it was incredible. And he said something else, too, before we take a break. He said, I'm going to paraphrase here. He said, quantum computing is going to discover alien life and make contact in the next 5 years, right? And for him to say something like that, is he in the know? And the other technologists in Silicon Valley, where they're out there reaching for the stars like this, do you think he knows something?
I think he does. I mean, he has no other reason to make these declarative statements like this that are so controversial and so out there. I mean, this guy's has major credibility in his industry, but he's talking like a nut.
Right.
Or is he telling us straight up exactly what's going on? I think he's telling us exactly what's going on.
Do you think we are on that brink? And the reason why I bring it up directly, and it's not so much about TTSA or the Navy videos. I'm not necessarily referring to that. I am referring to astronomers talking about fast radio bursts every single day, or another exoplanet, or the size of the universe, the amount of planets in the universe, and the search for alien life, and we're getting Tabitha's star. These are conversations that are happening in the fields of science daily.
Absolutely. And the British astronaut who said that there's no question aliens are here, and as a chemist, she said our bodies, of course, are nitrogen and carbon, and their bodies might be made of different material that we can't see yet. And maybe they're just cloaked from us, but they'll be uncloaking very soon.
That again, and this is what is so interesting about the days and the times that we are living in right now. We're talking about Britain's first astronaut, right? That's who we're talking about here.
Right.
And this is in mainstream media today. Another small piece of the puzzle that seems to be alien conversation that happens every time you go to a news service. It's everywhere, isn't it?
It is. And that's, again, as you said, it's a sign of our times. And it's only going to accelerate. And now we've got Space Force that's going to be driving it. They're already talking about we're going to be seeing a lot more UFO activity, more of this hypersonic technology being rolled out. Huntsville, Alabama is going to be ground zero for some pretty astounding things in the next few years.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, William Henry. When we come back after the break, we're going to go ancient. We're going to go backwards because we have to. It's William Henry. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. If you miss a live broadcast like this one with William Henry, you can subscribe to our podcast. It is just $2 per month. Go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on that podcast banner. We have over 1,100 shows right there in the archives, all the software you need, just $2 per month. We would do it for free, but we can't. So there you go, just $2 per month. Our guest tonight, William Henry. And now, William, check this out. In my most recent article that I wrote for The Telepath, I had stated this. You're going to laugh. You're going to laugh out loud. I stated this, that 1,000,000 years from now, a history teacher is going to be teaching a history class and is going to say that the beginning of everything was right here in the year 2000 when ancient man came out of the caves and went to technology. And that dot, right, at the beginning, right, you got 1,000,000-year timeline right there, right? And they're studying history and all of these fantastic time travel and all these big events. But the start of it all was when man came out of the caves and started using computers. And it's all encompassing in that whether you're Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal or Göbekli Tepe, however you want to look at it, in the future, we're just going to be considered ancient man, right? You've written about this exact subject, and you would think that I ripped you off. I didn't. I came up with that myself, but it's pretty interesting. You can go ahead, courtesy laugh, but that's kind of where we're at. Explain.
Yeah, I mean, we are, as I just put it, we are in the same relative position as Neanderthal was at the time of the last ice age. They are well adapted to living in the cold. They've got short bodies, thick noses. They can handle that type of weather. And then things start to warm up, and now they're not suited for it. But here comes these new, leaner, taller, maybe a little bit smarter beings, Homo sapiens, and they take over. They are able to adapt to the changing climate and the cataclysm that was ultimately going to unfold. And we're in that same relative position relative to transhumans. Our climate is obviously changing, whether it's man-made or if it's still part of this continuation of what started 12,000 years ago. We don't need to really debate that. The fact is things are changing, and our bodies are changing at the same time. We're blurring the line between our digital selves and our biological selves, our flesh and blood selves, and changing into transhumans so that we can live on this new earth. And that is also a fulfillment of a biblical prophecy. John the Revelator, Peter, others said, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And we are creating that new heaven and that new earth right before our very eyes.
So we are truly here. History starts today.
Yes. Yes, this is the beginning of anything that happened before today is irrelevant. Completely, as compared to where we are going. It is just the same as, I mean, how much thought, if you're apart from Andrew Collins, do people give to the Denisovans? Not very much. We don't think about that. It's not part of our daily discourse. And maybe as little as 200-300 years from now, people will think of us in the same context. Oh, that was our distant ancestors. They're irrelevant. They were nothing. They were nobodies. But that's not true. I mean, we are now knowing that they had advanced consciousness. Maybe they just up and left the planet. Maybe the Hobbit race that was here, the Denisovans, and others found ways to use portals to leave the planet. We're starting to find some evidence of that type of a thing. But the point is that we're making here, and I think it's the right one, Jimmy, is that history is beginning today. A whole new chapter is unfolding right before our very eyes, and we are the ones writing that chapter.
I made this comment. It sounds okay. I'm just going to put it out there. Compared to Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, early Homo sapien, the edge of the last ice age, 13,000 years ago, from that period until 100 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
We were the same. We had the wheel and fire.
Right.
It's the last 100 years where we've made these fantastic leaps, right?
Absolutely.
But in the big scheme of things, history starts today because we are the same that we were when we were in caves, discovering fire and figuring out the wheel. We were all the way to wagon trains going across the United States in the 1850s. It was the same technology. And I'm not taking anything away from medical science and stuff, but penicillin hadn't, electricity had, all of these things were still in the future all the way up until 1850, 1870. And that's it. We are the beginning of history today.
That's right. And I'd like to point out to people, too, that our body, my body, your body, is the exact same body that Jesus had when he turned himself into a being of light. It's the same body that the Tibetan guru Padmasambhava had when he turned himself into light. Same body that the Buddha had. Exact same physiology, exact same anatomy, everything. But that is also changing, where we're now augmenting our body with this technology so that our body is not the same as the body of Jesus. We now have plastic in our bodies. What that report said, I saw it the other day, every month each of us eats about a credit card size worth of plastic. And so we're changing the human body at the same time that our climate is changing. The two go hand in hand. And what I'm encouraging people to do is to look at the possibility of not merging ourselves with AI, but merging ourselves with ascended beings and focusing on the light body, getting back to our original true nature. This is what the Buddhists teach anyway, is that we originally were beings of light until we found ourselves enmeshed in our flesh and blood bodies. And that the way to advance ourselves as a species is not by meshing ourselves with technology, but to returning to our original and true nature as beings of light.
How is it, William, that ancient Egypt understood this? Right? The ancient Mesopotamian Sumerian cultures and their all of these ancient civilizations truly understood the soul and an afterlife and another dimension, and the focus should be on the self. How did we screw all of that up?
That's a really wonderful question, and I think part of it has to do that there were survivors of that cataclysm. Call them priesthoods, call them various secretive orders that lived in caves in Cappadocia or underground cities in Cappadocia or elsewhere and preserved the knowledge of this advanced civilization before the flood. After everything starts to settle down, I mean, we're talking now coming up into about 3000 BC is when civilization restarts. That's the first dynasty in Egypt. It's the beginning of the Mayan calendar. Krishna is supposed to be on the planet around 3100 BC. That seems to be about the time when we got our act together after the cataclysm, and people still possess the knowledge of our true spiritual nature and our true spiritual capabilities. And I think maybe what happened is that a lot of those people just left and took that knowledge with them and left the rest of us sort of to kind of fend for ourselves in a way. And this allowed a dark side then to come into the human equation. And we go back to making war and entering into the conflict that we do now. And I get this idea from, of course, Plato's story of Atlantis that said the cataclysm occurred because humanity had a spiritual element that they diluted or ignored. And this is what prompted Zeus in the story to send the flood that destroyed Atlantis. This motif or this idea of humanity originally being pure spiritual beings occurs in a lot of different cultures, and they all say the same thing. We lost that aspect of ourselves. We somehow forgot it, or perhaps the people that had that pure spiritual nature left the planet.
When we look at 2600, 3000 BC at Egypt, where that culture, the belief system, and the religion all looked at other dimensions, other realms, the afterlife, the judgment, the scales, right? All of these things were presented, demigods and the ancient gods of Egypt, a very complex view of the world and understanding of the world that couldn't have come from Stone Age man that was living in caves. Right. This is a very deep knowledge that was the foundation of everything. It had to have been taught from somebody before them, right?
Exactly. Either people that lived before the time of the cataclysm and brought that knowledge over, or beings that came from elsewhere, from other star civilizations, and taught the Egyptians this.
Well, and
it could be a combination of both, too, of course.
Yes, certainly. And Plato was told this, right? This wasn't invented, and it is certainly in the building text at Edfu, where the references directly to Atlantis are there. They weren't part of a thriller spy novel. This was part of their true history.
Absolutely. I mean, the story of these beings of light that come to Earth and set up the island of the egg and establish human civilization. They appeared to have some kind of technology in the story as well, this power pillar, like a jet pillar or something.
Right.
And then the story tells us that this island civilization sank, that there was a cataclysm. Some of these relics were secreted away. They were recovered after the cataclysm, and human civilization was kickstarted again. That's the story of Atlantis. That is the Atlantis story.
Is there an ET component to this that should be talked about?
I think so. It's either they're coming from other star civilizations, or if James Lovelock is right in the Gaia hypothesis, they're coming from within the Earth somehow itself.
This is where I want to talk about Ancient Aliens and your work with that. Ancient Aliens is able to take these ideas and bring them out to a very large audience. Is this something that you're involved with directly?
Well, I've been a presenter on the show for 10 years.
Right.
I'm a contributor to the show as well in terms of presenting story ideas and research about subjects that I think we should cover on the show, especially from a spiritual perspective. I'm considered like a spiritual advisor to the show. In other words, Eric von Daniken, Giorgio Tsoukalos, others, they tend to have more of that kind of nuts and bolts view that all the extraterrestrial involvement involves technology, that it's strictly flesh and blood beings. I believe that some of the beings are of a spiritual nature. They're in fact light beings. This is what the stories tell us over and over again. And they don't travel the stars in technological spaceships. They travel the stars as beings of light. They literally beam themselves through the cosmos and have the ability to manifest physical flesh and blood bodies wherever they go.
Now, how do you guys do that? I think we're all interested where the story ideas come from. Do you guys get together before the season starts and you share notes? How do you guys do that?
Yeah, we have done that. Prometheus Entertainment, that produces the show, has a phenomenal staff of researchers. I mean, for me as a presenter on the show, it's almost like Christmas when they send me the questions for each interview. Like I'll do. In a course of we did 40 episodes this season, 40 episodes. So I did something like, 10 interviews. I'm in LA once a month doing interviews. And that means that once a month I'm getting questions, 60, 70 questions per interview that the researchers have dug up on any given topic or any given episode. And then I'll go research the answers. And then while I'm at the interview, I'm collaborating with the producers of the show, talking about what we're doing, some of the topics that are in the news. will enter into the conversations as possible show subjects, because the show is very much a part of the disclosure movement now, because it's not just ancient aliens anymore. It's all current affairs as well, because the ancient ideas about aliens and modern ideas about aliens are merging at present.
Is there, we all see the memes, right? And
right.
That are based on public perception, and we all laugh at them. But in reality, is there anything that ancient aliens or the ET hypothesis in general can't be tied to? Like, if I just throw something out there, Dixie cups. Oh, it must be aliens, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you could go back and you find a depiction of some kind of a god being holding a cup, and it looks like a Dixie cup. It's got to be a Dixie cup, right?
Aliens. Right, it's got to be aliens. But, and there's always a but. But if we go back and we look at so many different things, and you start to look at this, and you wonder how you can have this leap of technology, or the way that something was built or something was designed, or whether it's the domestication of wheat. I don't care what it is. It could be, right? It could be. I'll give
you an example from this season of an episode that absolutely just rocked my world, blew my mind. It was the episode called Secrets of Stonehenge. And we've talked about Stonehenge in many different episodes in passing, but we never did an episode on Stonehenge. And so what happened is, we're getting into the episode, and everybody knows that about Stonehenge. They have a visual of it in their imagination, and maybe they know the lore that the blue stones that compose Stonehenge came from Wales, and that the people that brought them told all these legends about giants that built Stonehenge, and that, in fact, their ancestors were in the stones. And that's why these particular stones were so important in the building of Stonehenge, because they believed their ancestors were in the stones. And, kind of the knee-jerk response is, yeah, they're in the stones because they went through the stones. Everybody knows that. Stonehenge is a portal, right? So we're getting into the show, and here comes this Harvard research, a major genetic study on the British population. Everybody knows in the scientific community that modern-day Brits are descendants of the builders of Stonehenge. That is practically written in stone, but it's not true. What this Harvard study proved or showed, much to the astonishment of the archaeological community, and it's still sending shockwaves through the archaeological community, what they discovered is that shortly after building Stonehenge, the original inhabitants of England vanished. There is no DNA left of the Stonehenge builders in modern Britain. So where did these people go? They didn't go to Ireland. They didn't go to Scotland. They don't know where they went. And, of course, a Harvard geneticist, Mark Wright is his name, can't come out and say, well, the legends, is it true that they used Stonehenge as a portal? Is that how these people literally vanished? And ancient aliens can come out and say, yeah, this is what we think happened. They used Stonehenge. These people came out of Göbekli Tepe, where they learned to build these stone circles. They went up to Orkney in Scotland, did a little test drive. Mm-hmm. Then they came down to the Salisbury Plain, and they built Stonehenge, and they left the planet. So that when the next wave of inhabitants of Britain, called the Beaker people, came into England, it was empty. There was nobody there because they left. Now, the supposition that we get into the episode that is so mind-blowing, that feeds into what we're talking about tonight, is that there was an advanced pre-flood civilization. And after things settled down after the cataclysm, and this is our magic time period, about 3000 BC, they came out of their hiding places, and they built Stonehenge based on knowledge they had accumulated or brought over from this pre-flood civilization, and they left. They left the planet. It is an astonishing concept, but now the genetics is there to say these people are simply not on the planet. Where did they go?
I was watching last week California education presentation series, and one of the other segments of this, these are a series of lectures from professors in a school setting, and he's a astrophysicist, and he does 2 different lectures on Stonehenge. And he says, now this is like official university dogma, right? He says exactly what you just said. And I'm listening, and this is his curriculum. This is what he said. He said, we don't know who built Stonehenge, right? We know the timeline of it, geology and everything else, and carbon dating, 5,000 BC. But the Beaker people, they came along 2,000 years later. Stonehenge was already there. What they used Stonehenge for then is what they did with it, but it had nothing to do with whoever built it before and what their intentions were. And then he brings up the Druids. This is an astrophysicist, right? And he goes, the Druids and all these pagan rituals, the Druids didn't even show up for another 1,000 years. They had no idea. So everything that goes on today at Stonehenge has nothing to do with what the original builders intended. And we don't know what that is. And I was like, right on, dude, right on. Well, here you are today stating exactly what he was presenting last week. And I find that shocking. Most people don't understand that we don't know who the original builders were. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. But we do have a good idea that they probably came up from Göbekli Tepe based on the similarity of the construction. And we know that they originally were Turkish people. So there's, that idea is really pretty solid. Now, I know it sounds kind of out there that they use Stonehenge as some sort of a stargate or a portal to leave the planet, but if that's not the answer, then still science has to come up with its own answer of where exactly did these people go? Because as you're saying, too, when the Beaker people arrived, England was empty. And there's no sign of warfare. They didn't come into England and have to battle their way through. They didn't get to Stonehenge and do what most invaders do, destroy the cultural monument that's there before and go build houses with it or something. They left it intact. They left it alone, almost as if they were called there, that they had some kind of memory, ancestral memory of their ancestors who originally built Stonehenge, and they were going to that place and continuing as best they could with their mode of worship.
Is there a certain amount, we've got 2 minutes before the break, is there a certain amount of responsibility for you and Ancient Aliens now, knowing that some people are going to take their general history from Ancient Aliens, and you guys need to be really careful about the facts?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why things are almost always couched with a question. Is it possible? We're just trying to get people to think about these ideas. And very much like happened when Jurassic Park came out, now we've got a whole new generation of kids that have grown up watching Ancient Aliens, and they want to be ancient astronaut theorists. They want to start to look at some of these ideas. They want to approach the world from this perspective and investigate it for themselves. And that's what gets really exciting to think. I mean, Jimmy, I can't tell you how many 10 and 11-year-olds I have at my presentations because their parents watch the show with the kids, and the kids want to come out and they want to know more.
How important is Robert Clotworthy? How important has he become on this show?
No, he's the voice of the show. His inflection, his tone, his presentation lends, it just makes it totally credible, authentic, and personal.
I think he's just as important as Giorgio's hair. And I'm not saying that in jest. I am being very serious. He is such, it's his delivery, his intellect, his enunciation, and the way that he handles this subject matter has allowed millions of people to absorb it. And I think he deserves a lot of credit.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And thank God for Giorgio's hair, by the way.
More on that after this short break. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, William Henry. And when we come back, we're going to continue with this. We got to talk some ET And we're going to do that right after this short break. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I almost said Jimmy Hare. I'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, William Henry. And you can become an official Fadernaut. William's an official Fadernaut. You can become an official Fadernaut by going to our membership section over at jimmychurchradio.com. Sign up. You can even gift memberships now, too, over on our website. So go and visit our membership section today. Now, William, disclosure. Now, before we get into the big D and where we are at with that, Ancient Aliens has certainly had a hand in it. The influence of Ancient Aliens in bringing the reality of the UFO subject front and center, not only for pop culture, but for those out there that have needed this information and wanted to talk about it. Now they've got a place to go each week. It is important, but today UFOs and alien and ET contact, this is just common conversation, isn't it?
Oh, it's totally gone mainstream. I mean, just in the past few years, we've seen that just dramatic shift. And Ancient Aliens, I think, has provided a stair step, if you will, for people to approach this subject, to see that it crosses all cultures, it crosses many time periods. It's not a new phenomenon. In fact, it's something that has always been here.
Right.
But there's been this concerted effort, conspiracy to withhold the truth from humanity, and that's what we're trying to all get at ultimately. And some people are going to like it, and some people aren't going to like it. But the fact is that there has, in every culture and every time period, there have been stories, artwork, conversations about extraterrestrial beings and their intervention in human affairs. And our time is no different from any other time in history.
Certainly. Is it as basic as what came first, the chicken or the egg, in that the world has always had these questions? They were there. Ancient Aliens didn't create the atmosphere, but it's the vehicle that is allowing people to come out of the closet and talk about it openly.
Exactly. I mean, but people, it's a conversation starter. It's a way for people to come together and to say, "Oh, you too. You think this way too, huh?" And it doesn't mean you have to agree with everything on the show, but it is a recognition that this is part of the human experience, and we try to approach it in a non-religious fashion. We could easily look at it from a totally religious point of view, but we're not going to do that because that's going to polarize people. The object here is to bring people together and help people to understand the true nature of what has been happening and the possibilities for what's going to be happening in our immediate future.
I wouldn't be surprised, William. I'm serious, too, about what I'm about to say. I would not be surprised if that flying saucer lands in the middle of the 405 freeway. It lands in front of the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, right? Uh-huh. The flying saucer comes out. Stair steps, right? Boom, we're all there. Live TV, live streaming, we're filming, and Jesus comes down the steps. I just wouldn't be surprised. And it's not, I'm not saying Jesus, but I'm saying Jesus, right? Some imagery that would freak us out. And it could be for a lot of different reasons, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens that way.
I wouldn't either, and that's why I kept looking for that, getting back to our earlier conversation about the Netflix series Messiah. I was personally wanted to see something a little more cosmic about it. I wanted to see the Messiah's backstory. Did he shoot here on a beam of light? Does he have a flying saucer park somewhere that he came out of? How did this being get here? Because that is such a critical part of the original Jesus story, the Essene disclosure. They were a group of Jewish mystics who were calling in this high celestial being. They literally brought this being in from some other realm and had this intention to transform the human race, to make the human race more of a righteous being. And this is a direct answer, actually, to the cataclysm that had happened just 8,000 years before the time of Jesus or so, where everybody's wiped out, according to Plato, because we lost our true soul self, our sense of righteousness. And so the Essenes are calling in this high celestial being who can put humanity back on the right track and show us how to unfold or unpack this incredible spiritual potential enfolded within our DNA. I wanted to see something like that in the Netflix Messiah series, this something cosmic, something that would indicate that this Messiah has an otherworldly connection, because I believe the Messiah, when that figure appears, will have that dynamic.
It has to have a universe connection, a connection
Absolutely.
to everything. Yes. And and here's a twisted view. I'm going to get hit by lightning in just a second, but here's a twisted view. E.T. approaching here would study this planet for a long time. They would have a lot of time on their hands to learn about us before they arrive, and they wouldn't want to freak us out with their possible real image, whatever they may look like. So they would take a look at us and see who is the most popular person on the planet, right? And that could be a Jesus figure. It could be Elvis. It could be Giorgio Tsoukalos, right? It's Giorgio. But they would take that approach to it so we wouldn't be freaked out. And I think it would be the same way that it was approached in ancient times, like you are referring to. And I don't think that's too far off.
No, I don't either, because if it's too different, too other, we're probably going to reject it. And so it has to be like us. It has to have enough familiarity or similarity to where there's a comfort level with these beings.
We would have there would have to be a conversation starter, and it wouldn't. You know what I mean? You couldn't freak out. The world couldn't freak out. And with that, when we talk about disclosure, for you, are we in those days of disclosure? And what's your definition? What's your definition of disclosure?
Well, to me, disclosure is the ultimate recognition or acknowledgement by, say, the U.S. government that there's been a conspiracy to cover up the existence and our involvement with extraterrestrials. And disclosure would have something to do with perhaps a full revelation of what happened with Roswell and a tracking of how the U.S. government or other world governments have been in cahoots or in bed with extraterrestrials for the past 75 years or so. That, to me, is disclosure.
Are we there? Are we getting close?
I think we're very close to that. And I think Space Force standing up that battalion down in Huntsville, as we've done this year, is a major step forward towards that, because now they have a cover for rolling out a lot of this technology, and also a reason for going into space. We now are going to be starting to talk about perhaps a deep space threat or otherworldly beings that are going to be confronting humanity, and this will start the global conversation about, are we alone?
What about the spiritual and religious side of this? Religious leaders are going to have to address it as well. Will there be that component with disclosure? It wouldn't necessarily only come out of Washington, right, or London, or Moscow, but
right.
the world's religious leaders have to address this pretty directly. And would they have to disclose their knowledge?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that process actually started this past summer when all your Silicon Valley types had a major conference with the Vatican about the ethics of AI and this acknowledgement that AI is here and that we're not quite prepared for it. I think that disclosure and this development of AI are ultimately entwined. that what we're going to see is that AI is an alien intelligence, that it was planted here or seeded here by extraterrestrials as a way for literally, if not taking total control of humanity, ultimately possibly as a way of lifting up humanity, and that as 5G kicks in, as the global brain comes online even more, this is going to all feed into the disclosure scenario because, one, you're not going to have an ET civilization come here and negotiate with 185 different or separate governments. They're going to want to deal with one single entity. And that is what we're developing right now. That is what, at least what the globalists hope to achieve, is to create this single unified global government, all driven by AI. And that, to me, is a major foundation for disclosure and this revelation of the existence of extraterrestrials. And then what would ultimately happen with that is our earthly government would be superseded by whatever government these cosmic beings decide to implement on this planet.
Are you suggesting that AI is what drives the universe?
I haven't thought about it in those exact terms, but I am convinced that if we have AI and nanotechnology and all the other technologies that we have today, that any spacefaring civilization that came here in the ancient past would have also had it as well, and probably left it here for us.
Well, there's two ways I think to look at that, and I agree with what you're saying. But if ET has figured it out, and certainly they have, but let's say if they have figured it out, then the necessary meat bodies that we have aren't necessary anymore. And they would have conquered AI, gotten our consciousness or their consciousness out of themselves, and achieved immortality on a chipset where they're not held back anymore with the physical self. And that would be a light being, right? That's what we would have seen in years past, and that's how they would travel the stars, because they wouldn't, right? They wouldn't have the aging of the body to deal with.
Right. They're either going to travel the stars as robots or as light beings, one or the other.
Right, right. And do you remember the movie AI, oddly enough? At the end of the movie, Spielberg and Kubrick represent what? E.T. is a light being. Exactly. And I thought to myself when I saw that, and I can never let that image of E.T. escape, I thought to myself, that's exactly how it would be, right? That there's no other real way to look at it. They wouldn't have a physical body anymore.
No, they wouldn't. And that's what we're on the cusp of right now, is with virtual reality and augmented reality is coming to this place now where, in fact, we have a whole young generation. And this is, I think, in part what attracts some of the parents bringing their kids to my talks, especially my talks on AI and the simulated reality, because they're being taught this in school. They're being taught to create their digital avatar. They're being taught that they can have multiple selves, that they can exist in perpetuity as a digital being in a simulated reality, and that, in fact, this simulated reality is better than this physical reality. And, hey, maybe you do want to consider dropping your flesh and blood body and living in this simulated reality. And parents are wondering, how do I talk with my kids about this? What am I supposed to do here?
What about the ethics side of that? Because then you don't have any repercussions, right? If you could live forever, then I can do whatever I want. I don't have to be a good person anymore, right? There's a spiritual outlet. What about the ethics side of it? If that is the case, do we need to have AI police, right? An AI court system?
Well, yeah, what we need is, and Francis Bacon in his New Atlantis suggested this idea almost 500 years ago. What we need is a group of elders who will police the technology. We don't need necessarily AI police, but we need someone who is above Google, Apple, Samsung, Sony, telling them, you've gone too far and we can't allow you to go any further. in the development of this technology.
Well, like with the Vatican or Christianity or any other religious body where your ethics and morals are judged and you want to be a good person, because after you die, you're going to go to another place and you need to do the best that you can here. And certainly reincarnation even comes into play. But if you live forever, then none of that matters anymore.
If you don't believe in a continued existence in a higher realm, right, then it doesn't matter. You can basically do whatever you want, and that's the danger of what's happening now, the way Christianity is being attacked, because that is, in Western civilization, a fundamentally Christian idea, this notion that if you live a good life and be a good person, you're going to live forever in the kingdom of heaven. Well, if you take that away, then that's the underpinning of Western civilization, and that's the danger of that. Attacking it.
I know. Would there be, okay, let's stay on this for a second when we're talking about AI. And if you, William, are uploaded, you're now in an Android body, right? You're a full-on, no more, you've given up your William Henry self. And somebody now has the ability to flip a switch and turn you off.
Right.
Is that murder? Right? Is there an ethical part of this that we now need to address?
Well, and again, this gets back to what we were talking about earlier. This is the materialist view that if you're just information, no, it wouldn't be murder, because you're not really a spiritual entity. You're just information. And that information can be cut, pasted, augmented, edited, whatever. And that's the danger, in my view, of this viewpoint.
Yeah. Do you remember the movie Tron? Certainly the original movie Tron, right? Where you are now existing on a chipset. Right, you are on a hard drive. You are on a computer. That's where you are at. You're making the decisions and you're living your life, and it's still you, but you're on that chipset. But if somebody decides to turn that computer off, effectively, you're killed.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you no longer exist. Right.
So if you have an assistant at your house, an Android robot that is achieved AI, stay with me on this, right? A computer, artificial intelligence that now has consciousness. You can have a conversation with them, and it's your housekeeper, whatever, your assistant at the house. But can you abuse? What if you hit the robot? Right? Is this something that would be criminal? Are these the things that we need to deal with when we're talking about AI and the singularity in the future? Like kicking your Roomba, right? Is that like kicking your dog?
We are already assigning emotions and rights to robots. And so, that is not a far-fetched notion that we could, we are essentially starting to equate robots with pets, and we do have laws against the abuse of animals. So it's very easy to see how we could suddenly start to apply those same laws to these conscious entities, these AI robots or other entities that we are now creating in our own image. So I don't think that's too far-fetched at all, Jimmy.
How do we do that as a society? Where we are actually going from this 2D existence where we think we have a grip to the Philip K. Dick, you know what I mean? Arthur C. Clarke science fiction world that is actually part of our reality that we exist in now. We have to contemplate all of these issues.
Absolutely,
how do we
do? This is why it's a spiritual challenge that we're undergoing right now. Think about this: is like every time you go online, there is your digital avatar is out there negotiating with governments. It's negotiating with corporations. It's negotiating with people, swapping data, so forth. What we haven't done with that digital self, that digital avatar, is give it a physical body online. But that's what kids are now being encouraged to do now with all these simulation games, is to create their avatar. Facebook is heavily promoting this right now as well, is to say that you exist in this dimension, in this digital dimension. There is an aspect of you, a copy of you in a way, that is existing online. And that part of you will exist as long as the internet exists. Your flesh and blood body could be terminated at any moment, but your online self will continue to exist online and could effectively function as you as long as the internet exists. That's another form of immortality right there. And think about that after you leave, you have left your digital footprints, and your digital self will continue to exist in perpetuity.
Yeah, through machine learning, I am sure that Google knows more about me than I do.
Without a question.
Right? And yeah, so an avatar of me, because they know my habits. They know my habits better than me. Right?
For sure. And can manipulate you based on that as well.
And somebody could interact, a family member, with a digital version of me created by Google from information acquired over my habits, and they probably wouldn't know the difference.
And this is a form, this is techno-rapture. This is the digital ascension. This is a digital version of the ascension as described in the book of Revelation, and that is the foundational idea to Christianity. And this is why it's so dangerous, but at the same time, it can almost be thought of as exciting as well. And I always defer to the Pope in thinking about this. The logic that the Pope applies to extraterrestrials, I think, applies here as well. And this is Pope Francis talking. He said, "Who are we to limit God's creativity?" What he's referring to is, he made a statement that extraterrestrials might not look like us when they get here. They may not be humanoid. They may be different than us. Who are we to limit God's creativity? There can be all kinds of different brothers and sisters out there. And I apply that same logic to exactly this conversation we're having right now to our digital selves, that it's possible that this is how God intended for us to ascend, that this new kingdom of heaven spread out on the earth, and the new heaven and earth and the new humanity that's referred to in these prophecies could be being fulfilled right now in the digital dimension. And this is the one and only reason why I slightly keep the door open to this possibility. I'm 99.99% sure that developing AI and turning ourselves into transhumans is the wrong way for humanity to go. But I keep that 0.001% open because of that statement by Pope Francis that maybe this is the way we're supposed to evolve, that maybe, that again, who are we to limit God's creativity? This could be the way that we're supposed to go, but personally, I don't think so.
The appeal, the allure, which is quite directly no disease, right? If you're living in the digital, if you are uploaded, Michio Kaku said on this program, William, he said, hey, you know what? They've already uploaded consciousness at DARPA. They have the interface, right? He said this like 5 years ago. Well, if that is indeed the case, then there is no disease, right? There is no worry about that side of it. There's certainly no worries about the aging of the body. All of those physical constraints go away. And the other part is you are able to now learn forever.
Right. Everything.
Everything. You have access to all that was and all that will ever be, and you can acquire that knowledge and create, do the mathematics, and solve things forever. That's a pretty crazy thought. That may be too much for most people to turn down.
Right. Well, you get to learn what Google, Apple, Samsung, and Sony want you to be able to learn.
Right.
That's the problem with it, is you are not free to learn everything. You are free to learn what they decide is appropriate for you. And that's the line. That's where it crosses over into do no evil. That's Google's slogan. Wrong. That's evil. Because now you're talking about a totalitarian existence in a black box. That's called prison, in my opinion. And that's what they're creating, is a black box prison. They're luring people in with the promise, oh, you can have an IQ of 10,000. You can learn everything. If you just drop your physical body to save the planet, that's the latest reason, then you will be able to have all of the knowledge at your fingertips. You can go CB, do anything you want. But what they don't tell you in the fine print is exactly what the fine print says. You will only be able to do what we allow you to do.
You're such a bright ray of sunshine. I can't wait to see you. No, I'm serious. I can't wait to see you. In 1 month, you're going to be out here for the Conscious Life Expo, February 7th through the 10th with all of us. And you're going to be doing the panel with me on Friday night. That's going to be great.
Can't wait.
What are you going to speak about this year?
I'm going to be talking about AI and the new humanity, and some of it we've talked about this evening, and others of it will be a lot of new material. And then also I give a workshop on Monday called I Am Plus, which is about how we develop our spiritual self as a way to combat what is happening with AI and technology.
Fantastic. And don't forget my necklace. Oh, did I say that? William, safe travels to you and Claire. We'll break some bread in 4 weeks here in Los Angeles. Again, thank you so much. Great conversation.
And many blessings to everybody.
We're back at you. Thank you, William. And with that, I'm going to take a quick break. Thank you, WilliamHenry.net. The links are over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. And you've got to go to the Conscious Life Expo. It's at the LAX Hilton, February 7th through the 10th in, can you believe it, 4 short weeks. I am your host, Jimmy Church. When I come back after the break, I'm going to open up the phone lines. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with me. I'll be right back.